Hello, everybody. Chad Maxey here with Atlas Insurance Services. We are a family owned and operated independent agency in Littleton, Colorado. I've personally been in the insurance world for probably close to 22 years, I'm going to imagine. But we wanted to come online and speak a little bit about some of the coverages that are on your policy, hopefully help you guys to better understand what those coverages are and how they can properly protect you. And we also have a personal injury attorney, Ms. Dale Casares, joining us today. So Dale, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Dale Casares. I'm a personal injury attorney. I have been in the injury and insurance claim field for almost 2 decades. I started at Progressive Insurance and claims and litigation, and then went to law school, and now I've been a personal injury attorney for over 7 years, and cannot wait to talk to you about the coverages that you must have on your insurance policy. So thank you, Chad, for allowing me to join you today.
Absolutely, Dale. So we wanted to talk a little bit about uninsured motorists and what uninsured motorists is all about here. Um, you probably see it all the time. I see it all the time of people that are basically, they don't have the coverage, they need the coverage, or they're getting a policy that's basically online. The stats are, we just looked them up, the stats are 1 in 6 drivers are uninsured currently today. Do you see that a lot in what you're dealing with, Dale?
Yes, of course. I do see that a lot of drivers are uninsured. And then I also see that a significant amount of drivers are underinsured. In my experience, and I talked about this in your experience, it seems like about 30% of drivers out there are also underinsured. So what uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage pays for is everything that the other driver would be responsible for.
Now, does that pay for anything like such thing as lost wages, pain and suffering, anything along those lines too? So if an uninsured driver hits me, what all are they liable for? They're liable for my medical bills, but does that also include loss of work, income, anything along those lines?
Yes, it's everything that the at-fault party would be responsible for if your case continued and went into litigation and went to trial. Um, there's generally 4 areas of damages that I talk to my clients about, and it's one is economic, and so obviously anything you can put a dollar sign on. So medical bills, lost wages, household services if you have to hire somebody to mow your yard because you can't, non-economic damages, that is the pain and suffering. And then there's also impairment. So if you have to get a shoulder surgery and your shoulder is never back to normal, you never regain the strength, you never regain the range of motion, that is an impairment, and there's compensation for that. And then there's also compensation for disfigurement. So if you get a scar on your forehead, there's compensation for that out and above what is pain and suffering. So 4 different areas of damages that the other driver would be responsible for, but if he or she does not have enough money, you get nothing else.
Yeah, and I see the main thing that I see that comes across my desk and people don't think about it is the lost wages and the pain and suffering and all the stuff like we need somebody to mow our lawn now and what have you. Those are things that people don't think that they're actually responsible for or the other party's responsible for. And so they have no coverage. So that's where we come into play as insurance agents is our job is to properly protect you and your assets of what you have before they're taken away from you. And if, I mean, what's the price tag on pain and suffering? No one has an actual dollar figure of what pain and suffering actually costs and your lost wages. God forbid you hit somebody that's in a medical field or anything along those lines that you break somebody's arm and they're a handyman or they work in construction or they have to use that arm. Now they're out of work for 6 weeks or what have you, and you're responsible for those.
Or disabled or change of career too. So I'll tell you one final thing. I am able to obtain multiple policy limit settlements, which sounds good, but what that means is that those cases were worth more. And if there was more insurance, we could have got more money for those victims. So do yourself a favor and talk to Chad about the differences of different premiums for uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking to one of my clients earlier today, and I ran a quote and a figure because they currently have state minimum limits for which state minimum limits are 2550 for your uninsured motorist, or you can actually reject it. You don't have to have any. But this client had 2550, $25,000 for per person $50,000 per occurrence for uninsured motorists. That's what you're going to get for your pain and suffering from an uninsured party. But I increased those limits all the way up to $250,000 per person, $500,000 per occurrence. And that change of premium was $124 per year. Now, if you do the math on that, that's less than $10 a month. $10 a month, how much does a Starbucks coffee cost you? And how much would you give if your daughter or your husband or wife were injured in that vehicle and you just didn't think you needed the coverage of uninsured motorists, honestly? And for $10 a month, and you now don't have $250,000 in coverage for your family member, period. And you go on to Geico, you go on to you go onto any of these companies that you go online and you do your own policy, and you find out that, you know what, I didn't want that. I rejected it because it cost me $200 per year. Long game of things, it's going to cost you for the rest of your life, period.
Oh,
But
100%.
so we were also talking a little bit ago about medical payments too, and medical payments comes up in the state of Colorado. You're only required to have $5,000 in medical payments unless you actually reject the coverage and get a rejection form from our insured on there. So typically we see agents put on $5,000 in medical payment coverage on every single policy. And it's one of the cheapest medical payment coverages that you can possibly get. You want to think about what medical payments can actually cover. And medical payments can cover an array of things. Dale, do you want to shed some light on that?
Sure. So I am a big proponent of MedPay. MedPay obviously helps pay for medical bills. So it's medical payments coverage. It's only for medical bills, not lost wages or any other economic expenses at this time. But what MedPay does for you now is it pays your claims as you incur them. A lot of people don't realize that when they make a claim against the party who is at fault and start having to negotiate with that insurance company, the insurance company doesn't pay a dime until you have a settlement. And that could be 6 months from now, that could be 3 years from now, or after a jury verdict. So MedPay is something that's going to help you now get by in the meantime. Even if you have health insurance, MedPay can help with your deductibles and copays. I know a lot of us have high deductible, high copay health insurances right now. And I mean, if you have to go to the ER and you're faced with a $1,200 copay, what are you going to do about it? MedPay can pay that for you, and it's very cheap.
Yeah, very inexpensive. And a lot of people, going back to your point on that, a lot of people think that making a medical payment claim or an uninsured motorist claim is going to increase your insurance rates. And it's just simply not true, because a medical payment claim pays per person in the vehicle regardless of fault. So if you're not at fault for the accident, it's not going to make your insurance rates go up. It doesn't make you a worse driver. Yes, they're paying out money, but it doesn't make you a worse driver. You're not a bigger risk for the client, for the insurance carrier. And the same goes for uninsured motorists. An uninsured motorist, that's always a not at fault accident. It only pays out if the other party is at fault and they have uninsured, they don't have enough insurance, or they're underinsured or not insured at all, period. So typically you're nine times out of 10, you're going to see this will not increase your rates one bit on your policy. And you absolutely need to turn in those claims. First of all, you never know if there's a medical injury or the other party is going to turn in the claim too. But going back to your point about medical payments and what it actually costs, to change a policy from $5,000 in coverage all the way up to $25,000 in coverage per person riding in the vehicle. That means $25,000 for you, $25,000 for your wife, $25,000 for your kids in the back, so on and so forth. Even if they're not family members, it can be anybody. You have an 18-year-old driver, your daughter is driving the vehicle around and she's driving around with all of her 18-year-old friends. It's $25,000 for the friends as well. The rate on that went from $5,000 up to $25,000 in coverage, $73 per year. This is on a 2-vehicle policy right now. That's $6 a month. That's only $6 for a cup of coffee at Starbucks. I would
And like
highly suggest you do it.
said, I mean, liability and coverage, you buy those in their combined policy limits, right? So 25, 50, $50,000 maximum. MedPay is not that way. So if you've got a car of 12 people in your car, you get $25,000 of MedPay for each one of those 12 people, regardless of faults and regardless of other insurance out there. I also want to mention one thing that you kind of made me think of just there, Chad. If your daughter or son is in their friend's car and their friend has underinsured motorist coverage and med pay, you still need to make a claim on your policy because your own med pay and UIM will also apply. So the first party coverages are stacking. They follow you.
Yeah, that gets brought up, and a lot of people also don't think about with uninsured motorist. And we'll probably go into a little segment here about the definition of what uninsured motorist is. Uninsured motorist also pays for you if you're riding in a bike, if you're riding in somebody else's vehicle. You don't have to be riding in your vehicle for you to be able to claim uninsured motorist from your policy. That's one thing people have a misconception of. So if you're riding your bike, we're coming up to springtime, and right now everyone's going to be on the highways riding their bikes all around and what have you. And if you get in an accident with that, and another vehicle hits you, and they don't have enough coverage because they hit you and did bodily injury to you, you're on a bicycle. There's nothing to save you or anything along those lines. There's no defense for you. You're going to get injured. And your uninsured motorist from your own auto policy will kick into play and cover you.
Correct. If you're hit by a car, by an at-fault vehicle, then your underinsured motorist coverage goes with you.
Yeah, now Dale and I were also having the conversation the other day on motorcycles, and it's coming up to springtime now here in Colorado, and we're talking about motorcycle coverage and having uninsured motorist on your motorcycle policy or not, because in the state of Colorado, uninsured motorist is called what's called stackable. So if you have it on your auto policy, you don't technically need it on your motorcycle policy because your auto policy does have the coverage built into it, and it will carry over onto your motorcycle policy. But here's the scary thing about this. Are you always in control of your motorcycle policy and what the other carrier does? What if you go to an agent that you don't know and they remove uninsured motorist? Well, now you don't have any uninsured motorists on your motorcycle, and that's the one thing where you need the coverage on your motorcycle policy. So I always recommend, regardless of what it is, it might cost a little bit extra money, but just have uninsured motorists on your auto policy and on your motorcycle policy, because then again, they can stack on top of each other for almost double the coverage too.
So that would be a benefit. A huge problem that somebody would have is if the insurance policy has an exclusion. So some insurance policies have exclusions, like you do not get underinsured motorist coverage on a vehicle that you own but haven't insured. So that's a huge risk. So just get it. Just get it on the bike.
Yeah, you might as well. It's CYA, make sure that you're covered and all that stuff. And especially here in Colorado, we all like to get on the motorcycles and go out and tool around town and what have you, especially since we're all cooped up right now. But
I want to mention something else. When I have a client who has damages that far exceed the liability, the at-fault party's policy limits, I have to have this conversation with them, and I have to say, look, yes, your damages are probably worth $50 or $100 or $250,000, but all there is this minimum limits policy of $25,000. That means that's all you get, period. So even if you died, all you're going to get from the at-fault party is $25,000. And people don't understand that. People think, well, I'll take the $25,000 from the insurance company and then I'll go sue this driver. And that's not the way it works. The insurance is out there to give money in exchange for a signed release. So you are 100% stuck with the policy limits for the at-fault driver, assuming they don't have significant assets.
absolutely. And I get my other thing that I always tell my clients too is when clients call me for a policy, I always match the uninsured motorist to whatever the liability limit is. It just makes it's seamless. And second of all, your uninsured motorist has to meet the limits of the liability that are on your policy. And if they don't, you have to get a rejection form or disclose and sign off that you are buying lower limits of liability. But to me, that just makes no sense. If I'm buying liability limits, now liability on an insurance on an auto policy covers the other party. If it covers the other party and uninsured motorist covers me, why would I ever get less coverage and pay for something that covers me that doesn't cover me? You know, if I'm going to pay more premium for coverage that covers me, period, on the policy, and that made no sense, and I'll edit that out later, but that's okay.
Now, I can, Chad, what I think you're trying to say is why would you pay more to insure somebody else and not yourself? So if you're going to buy 100, 300, or 250 so that you can protect the people that you hurt if you are responsible for that, why would you not do that for yourself? You know, you're buying this insurance for yourself. And I'll tell you, this is my philosophy, my personal philosophy. I have purchased the amount of liability coverage that I have, not because I'm particularly concerned about having to liquidate my assets, but because I want the underinsured motorist coverage for myself, my son, and my husband who rides a motorcycle. So I specifically increase the amount of liability in order to get the UIM, the underinsured motorist coverage for my family.
Absolutely. It's all about protecting your families and your loved ones and your assets, right? And that's the name of the
Yes.
game.